The universe holds countless secrets, but none would shake the foundations of galactic society, quite like the discovery that would emerge from a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. This is a story of underestimation, evolution, and the unyielding spirit of a species that refused to accept limitations. In the glittering expanse of the Andromeda trade station, Ambassador Threlxus adjusted his ceremonial robes as he prepared for another tedious council meeting. The Varanthi representative had served on the Galactic Assembly for nearly 3 centuries, and in all that time, he had never witnessed anything truly surprising. The galaxy operated on predictable patterns. Advanced civilizations traded, negotiated, and occasionally skirmished over resources. Primitive species remained locked in their home systems, struggling with basic physics while the enlightened races moved freely between stars. His assistant, a young Varanthi named Kelrith, approached with a data tablet clutched in his 3-fingered hands. The scales along his neck showed hints of orange, a sign of agitation in their species. Ambassador, the monitoring division has flagged an anomaly in Sector 447. Threlxus barely glanced up from his morning briefing. Sector 447, that backwater region with the quarantined primitives? Yes, sir. The species designation is Terran. They call their world Earth. The automated probes detected unusual quantum fluctuations near their moon. The ambassador's laugh was a series of clicks and whistles. Those creatures are still using chemical propulsion to reach their own satellite. They probably caused some kind of accident. Note it in the log and move on. Kelrith's scales darkened further. Sir, the quantum signature matches theoretical models for spatial folding. The mathematics are complex, but our analysis suggests they may have achieved a breakthrough. Impossible. Threlxus finally looked up, his 4 eyes focusing on his assistant with an expression that mixed amusement and irritation. The Terrans have barely mastered their own gravity well. Last report showed them fighting wars over frozen water deposits in their polar regions. They have approximately 7 different governmental systems that refuse to cooperate on basic scientific research. Their most advanced spacecraft takes months to reach their nearest planetary neighbor, and you want me to believe they have stumbled upon spatial manipulation technology? The young assistant shifted his weight nervously. The data is unusual, sir. Perhaps we should send a science team to investigate. Threlxus stood, his full height of nearly 8 feet making Kelrith step back. Do you know how many species exist at the Terran development level? Thousands. Do you know how many of those ever achieve faster than light capability? Less than 3%. The Terrans show every sign of being part of the 97% that never leave their home system. He walked to the viewport, where stars stretched in infinite patterns across the darkness. I have studied the Terran civilization extensively. They are violent, short-lived, and incapable of long-term planning. Their average lifespan is barely a century. They wage wars over resources they have in abundance. They create art about their own destruction. They are a species eating itself from within. But the quantum readings are probably a weapons test gone wrong, Threlxus interrupted. The Terrans excel at finding new ways to destroy themselves. If they have discovered something related to quantum mechanics, they will weaponize it within a decade and use it to fight each other over pieces of land or ancient religious disputes. Kelrith made one more attempt. The Council requires us to investigate any potential FTL development. The protocols are clear. The ambassador turned, his expression softening slightly. You are young, Kelrith. You have not yet learned to recognize the patterns. I will teach you. The Terrans have existed in their current form for approximately 200,000 of their years. In all that time, they have achieved spaceflight only in the last century. They reached their moon 50 years ago and have barely returned since. Their international cooperation is virtually non-existent. They cannot agree on how to manage their own atmosphere, let alone coordinate the massive projects required for interstellar travel. He pulled up a holographic display showing Earth rotating slowly in the void. Look at their world. Beautiful, yes. Rich in resources, perfect for life, a paradise by any measure. And yet they fight endlessly over its division. They draw invisible lines and kill each other for crossing them. They have enough food to feed their entire population. Yet millions starve because of how they distribute resources. They have the technology to clean their air and water. Yet they poison both for short-term profit. Threlxus zoomed the display to show lights scattered across the night side of the planet. Each point of light represents a different governmental entity. They have over 200 separate nations, each with its own agenda, its own military, its own goals. Successful spacefaring civilizations require unity of purpose. The Terrans cannot even unify their own species, let alone reach for the stars. Perhaps that diversity could be a strength, Kelrith suggested quietly. Diversity? Threlxus laughed again. Diversity without cooperation is chaos. The Terrans argue about everything. Their scientists publish conflicting research. Their governments hide discoveries from each other. Their corporations compete rather than collaborate. This is not a species on the verge of greatness. This is a species trapped in its own contradictions. The ambassador closed the holographic display with a gesture. File your report, mark it as low priority, and request a review in 50 standard years. If the Terrans still exist by then, perhaps we will take another look, but I would not place any wagers on their survival. As Kelrith left the office, Threlxus returned to his preparations for the council meeting. He had real matters to attend to. The Drivathi were pushing for expanded mining rights in the Kepler belt. The Zunari Trade Federation wanted revised tariff agreements. The Varanthi military was requesting upgraded shield technology to counter pirate raids on the outer colonies. These were the issues that mattered in galactic politics. The Terrans were nothing but a footnote, a curious example of a species that showed early promise but lacked the fundamental characteristics required for advancement. They would likely destroy themselves within the next few centuries, either through war, environmental collapse, or simple stagnation. It was a sad pattern, but one Threlxus had witnessed too many times to count. Meanwhile, on Earth, in a nondescript building outside Geneva, Dr. Katerina Volkov stared at her computer screen with hands that trembled from exhaustion and excitement. The international team of physicists she led had been working for 72 hours straight, checking and rechecking their results. The numbers remained consistent. The impossible had become real. The device they called the fold drive had functioned for precisely 2.7 seconds. In that time, it had bent space itself, creating a bridge between 2 points that should have been separated by empty void. A simple probe had traveled from Earth to a point beyond the Moon without crossing the space between. It had simply stepped from one location to another, using the fold as a shortcut through reality itself. Run the simulation again, she told her colleague, a brilliant engineer from Lagos named Obina Chukwu. Katerina, we have run it 43 times. The math holds. The experiment was successful. She rubbed her eyes, trying to process what they had achieved. Every physics model said this should be impossible. The energy requirements alone should have been astronomical. But by using a cascading series of quantum entanglements and exploiting a loophole in space-time geometry, they had done it. They had broken the light barrier without actually moving faster than light. What happens next? Asked Dr. Yuki Tanaka, their quantum specialist. Katerina looked at her team, people from 17 different nations who had worked together despite political tensions, budget constraints, and international skepticism. She thought about all the wars, all the divisions, all the reasons the rest of the galaxy might think humanity was not ready for the stars. Then she smiled. Next, we make it bigger. 3 months had passed since the Geneva breakthrough, and the universe remained blissfully unaware of the storm gathering on a small blue world. But storms, once begun, have a way of growing beyond all expectations. Katerina Volkov stood before a gathering that would have been unthinkable just a year ago. The underground conference room, built deep beneath the Swiss Alps, housed representatives from nations that had been enemies for generations. Chinese physicists sat beside American engineers. Russian mathematicians collaborated with Ukrainian programmers. Indian biotechnicians shared data with Pakistani material scientists. The fold drive had accomplished what centuries of diplomacy could not. It had given humanity a common purpose that transcended borders. The second test will occur in 72 hours, Katerina announced, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was proposing. We have scaled up the fold drive by a factor of 30. If successful, we will transport a crewed vessel from Earth orbit to the edge of our solar system. A hand rose from the audience. Dr. Obina Chukwu, now co-director of the project, stood to address the concern written on every face. I know what you are thinking. This is too fast, too dangerous. We should take years, maybe decades, to perfect the technology before risking human lives. He paused, his dark eyes sweeping across the room. But we do not have decades. Our automated probes have detected something troubling. There are objects in our outer system, satellites, monitoring stations. We are not alone, and we are being watched. The room erupted in whispered conversations. Katerina let them process the information before raising her hand for silence. We have been living in a cage we did not know existed. Whoever built those stations has been observing us, studying us, perhaps judging us. The question is simple. When they decide we are ready to know about them, do we want to meet them as children playing with fire, or as equals who have earned our place among the stars? In the back of the room, Commander Jackson Torres of the United Earth Defense Initiative listened with growing understanding. He had spent 20 years in various militaries fighting battles that now seemed impossibly small. Border disputes, resource conflicts, territorial squabbles. All of it meaningless when measured against the vastness of space and the presence of others who had already claimed it. "What do you need from us?" he asked. "Volunteers," Katerina replied. 3 people willing to take the first full jump. We have run every simulation. The mathematics are sound. The safety protocols are in place. But this will be dangerous. Anyone who steps into that ship might not come back. Torres stood. "I volunteer." Within minutes, 2 others joined him. Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, a physician and biologist who had studied the effects of space travel on human physiology for 15 years. And Hiroshi Nakamura, an engineer who had helped design the fold drive's containment systems and understood its mechanisms better than anyone, except the core team. The next 72 hours blurred into a frenzy of preparation. The ship, christened the Pioneer, was little more than a reinforced capsule built around a miniaturized fold drive. It had life support for 6 hours, basic maneuvering thrusters, and enough instrumentation to record every millisecond of the journey. It was not elegant. It was not comfortable, but it would either prove humanity's worth or serve as a coffin for 3 brave souls. High above Earth, in the cold silence of the monitoring station designated Outpost 447 Prime, the artificial intelligence, tasked with observing the primitive species below, registered an unusual energy spike. For 3 centuries it had dutifully recorded the slow, painful progress of the Terrans. It had watched them split the atom. It had observed their first stumbling steps into space. It had noted their wars, their achievements, their setbacks. The AI, functioning within parameters set eons ago by its Voranthi creators, categorized the energy spike as anomalous, but not immediately concerning. Primitive species often experimented with dangerous technologies. Usually, these experiments ended in failure or disaster. The monitoring protocols did not require alerting the Galactic Assembly, unless the species achieved confirmed FTL capability. The AI continued its watch, sensors focused on the orbital platform where the Terrans had assembled their latest project. On the Andromeda trade station, Ambassador Threlxus reviewed trade agreements with the Dravathi Mining Consortium, completely unaware that his certainty about the Terrans was about to be shattered. His assistant Kelrith had stopped bothering him with reports from Sector 447. The quantum fluctuations had been filed away, marked as unexplained but low priority. The galaxy moved on, as it always did, focused on the species that mattered. Back on Earth, in the final hours before the test, Commander Torres floated in the zero gravity of the orbital platform, looking down at his homeworld. From here you could not see the borders. You could not identify the nations. There was only one world, blue and green and beautiful, hanging in the void like a jewel. Having second thoughts? Patricia Okonkwo floated up beside him, her dreadlocks forming a halo around her head in the microgravity. "Not about the mission," Torres replied. "I was just thinking about how small our conflicts seem from up here. We have spent so much time fighting each other, we never looked up to see what else was out there." Hiroshi joined them, his calm demeanor unchanged despite the approaching test. "My grandfather lived through the wars of the 20th century. He used to tell me that humanity's greatest weakness was also our greatest strength. We are tribal. We divide ourselves into groups and defend those groups fiercely. But when faced with something bigger than ourselves, something that threatens all tribes equally, we can unite in ways no other species could match." "You think that is what this is?" Patricia asked. "A unifying threat?" "I think it is an opportunity," Hiroshi said. "For the first time in our history, We have a goal that matters more than our differences. We have a chance to become something more than we have been. The final countdown began. The 3 volunteers entered the Pioneer, sealing themselves into the cramped interior. Katerina's voice came through the communication system, steady and clear. All systems are nominal. Fold drive is charging. You are cleared for activation in 60 seconds. Torres strapped into the pilot's seat, though there would be little piloting required. The fold drive would do the work. Either it would function as designed, transporting them instantaneously to the edge of the solar system, or it would fail catastrophically. There was no middle ground. 30 seconds. Patricia checked the biological monitors one last time. Her heart rate was elevated, but within acceptable parameters. Adrenaline was doing its job, sharpening her senses for whatever came next. 15 seconds. Hiroshi's hands moved across the engineering console, watching power levels rise as the fold drive reached critical charge. The mathematics that made this possible still amazed him. They had found a way to convince the universe that 2 distant points were actually the same location. For a brief moment, they would exist everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Activation. The Pioneer vanished, not gradually, not with a flash of light or dramatic explosion. One moment it occupied space near Earth. The next moment it simply was not there. In the control room in Geneva, every screen showed the same data. Telemetry had ceased. Visual tracking had lost the ship. For 5 agonizing seconds, there was only silence. Then, from 4 billion kilometers away, a signal arrived. Weak, but unmistakable. 3 words that changed everything. Pioneer to control. Fold successful. We are beyond Neptune. Repeat. Fold successful. The control room erupted. Scientists embraced. Engineers wept. People from nations that had been enemies hours ago celebrated together, united in the understanding of what they had just achieved. Humanity had broken the chains of its home system. The cage door was open. On monitoring station outpost 447 Prime, the AI registered an event that matched no category in its extensive database. A Terran vessel had disappeared from Earth orbit and reappeared instantaneously at the edge of the system. This was not theoretical physics. This was not an accident. This was controlled, repeatable, faster than light travel. For the first time in 300 years, the AI activated its priority alert protocols. A message burst toward the Andromeda, trade station at faster than light speeds, carrying data that would reach Ambassador Threlxus in approximately 6 standard hours. The message was simple and devastating. Priority alert. Species Terran has achieved confirmed FTL capability. Request immediate assembly review. Previous assessments may require revision. In the Pioneer, Commander Torres looked at his crewmates, all 3 of them grinning like children despite the professional demeanor they tried to maintain. Control wants us to run diagnostics and then fold back to Earth, Patricia reported. Torres nodded, but his eyes were drawn to the viewport where the stars blazed in patterns humans had dreamed about for millennia. Somewhere out there, among those countless points of light, others were watching. Others who had underestimated what humanity could achieve when properly motivated. Let them watch, he said quietly. Let them see what we can do. 6 hours after the Pioneer's successful fold jump, Ambassador Threlxus sat in his private quarters, staring at a message that should not exist. His 4 eyes read the text again and again, searching for an error, a glitch, anything that would explain how his certainty had crumbled into dust. The Terrans had achieved fold technology. Not in 500 years, not in 1,000 years now today. A species he had dismissed as primitive and self-destructive had accomplished, in mere months, what took most civilizations, centuries of coordinated effort. His hands trembled as he pulled up the monitoring data. The numbers were undeniable. The Terran vessel had moved 4 billion kilometers instantaneously. The energy signatures matched theoretical models for stable spatial folding. This was not luck. This was mastery of physics that should have been beyond their reach. Kelrith entered without announcement, his scales bright orange with agitation. Ambassador, the Assembly is convening an emergency session. The Varanthi High Command wants your immediate assessment. The Dravathi are demanding explanations. The Zunari are asking if we falsified previous reports. Threlxus felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Fear. Not of the Terrans themselves, but of what their achievement represented. Every calculation, every assumption, every comfortable prediction about how the galaxy worked had just been proven wrong. Prepare a full briefing, he said quietly. Include everything. Every report we ignored. Every warning we dismissed. Every sign we missed. As Kelrith worked, Threlxus accessed the historical databases. He searched for precedent for any other species that had made such a leap. The results chilled him. Only twice in recorded galactic history had a pre-FTL species achieved fold capability so rapidly. The Kinthari 12,000 years ago, and the Varanthi themselves 20,000 years before that. Both species had gone on to become dominant galactic powers. The difference was terrifying. The Kinthari and Varanthi had unified their worlds before reaching for the stars. They had resolved their conflicts, established global governance, created the social stability necessary for massive scientific projects. The Terrans had done none of that. They had achieved the impossible while still fighting among themselves, still divided into hundreds of competing factions, still wrestling with problems that should have prevented any breakthrough. What did that mean? What kind of species could advance technologically while remaining socially fractured? And more importantly, what would they become once they truly unified? On Earth, the celebration had transformed into organized chaos. Every nation wanted access to the fold technology. Every military wanted it weaponized. Every corporation wanted to commercialize it. The fragile cooperation that had enabled the breakthrough threatened to shatter under the weight of competing interests. Katerina Volkov found herself in a position no scientist should occupy. She held knowledge that could reshape civilization, and every power structure on the planet wanted to control it. The underground facility had become a fortress, protected by soldiers from a dozen nations, all eyeing each other with barely concealed suspicion. "We cannot keep this contained," Obina said during an emergency meeting of the core team. "Every intelligence agency on Earth knows something happened." The fold signature was visible to anyone with the right equipment. "We have days, maybe hours, before this becomes public knowledge." Hiroshi leaned back in his chair, exhaustion evident in every line of his face. Perhaps that is not a bad thing. Secrecy breeds conflict. If we make the technology available to everyone simultaneously, no single nation can monopolize it. "You are talking about giving fold drive capability to every country on Earth?" Patricia looked incredulous. "Some of those governments are barely stable. We could trigger wars." "We will trigger wars if we try to keep it secret," Katerina said softly. Hiroshi is right. Our only hope is transparency. We publish everything. The mathematics, the engineering, the safety protocols. We make it freely available to anyone with the capability to build it. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. What they were proposing went against every instinct of national security, every principle of competitive advantage. It was madness. It was also the only path forward. Commander Torres entered the room still wearing his flight suit from the return journey. "I have been listening to the military communications. 12 different nations are preparing to seize this facility. They will be here within 48 hours. If we want to act, it has to be now." Katerina made her decision. "Obina, prepare the data dump. Everything we have. Upload it to every scientific database, every university network, every public forum you can access. Make it impossible to suppress. That will cause chaos," Patricia warned. "Yes," Katerina agreed, "but it will be honest chaos. And maybe, just maybe, it will force us to finally work together. Because once this information is public, once every nation has access to fold technology, we will have a choice. We can turn these drives into weapons and destroy ourselves, or we can turn them into bridges and reach for something better." As her team worked to prepare the greatest information release in human history, Katerina thought about the monitoring stations in the outer system. Someone had been watching them for who knew how long. Someone who clearly had not expected humans to progress so rapidly. She wondered what they thought now. Whether they were afraid or curious or preparing for conflict. Humanity was about to announce itself to the galaxy in the loudest way possible. There would be consequences. There would be challenges humanity had never imagined. But there would also be opportunities. The data dump began at midnight, Geneva time. Within minutes, fold drive specifications flooded the internet. Within an hour, scientists around the world were analyzing the information. Within 6 hours, 3 separate nations announced they were beginning construction of their own fold drives. Within 12 hours, the United Nations called an emergency session to discuss the formation of a unified Earth space agency. The chaos Katerina predicted materialized with frightening speed. But so did something else, something that gave her hope. Students in Mumbai collaborated with researchers in Stockholm. Engineers in Sao Paulo shared insights with physicists in Tokyo. The barriers that had divided humanity for millennia began to crack under the pressure of shared ambition. On the Andromeda trade station, Ambassador Threlxus stood before the Galactic Assembly and did something he had never done in 3 centuries of service. He admitted he was wrong. The Terrans are not what we believed them to be, he told the gathered representatives of 100 worlds. Their division is not weakness. Their conflict is not stagnation. They are a species that advances through chaos, that innovates through competition, that solves problems by approaching them from 1,000 different angles simultaneously. He displayed the monitoring data, showing the rapid proliferation of fold technology across the Terran world. In less than 1 planetary rotation, they have shared their greatest discovery with their entire species. No single government controls it. No military has monopolized it. They have weaponized transparency itself. The assembly murmured in confusion and concern. This was unprecedented. Species did not share game-changing technology freely. They hoarded it, controlled it, used it for advantage. What do you recommend? Asked the Dravathi representative, her voice sharp with worry. Threlxus looked at the data one more time, at the impossible species that had shattered every prediction. I recommend we prepare for first contact, because whether we are ready or not, the Terrans are coming, and I suspect the galaxy will never be the same. In Geneva, Katerina Volkov received a message on a frequency that should not exist, a frequency her equipment should not be able to detect. The message was in perfect English, though the syntax suggested it had been translated from something very different. Greetings, Dr. Volkov. We have been watching your species for some time. We did not expect you to reach this milestone so quickly. We would like to discuss the possibility of formal first contact. If you are interested, please respond on this frequency. We will be listening. Katerina looked at her team, at the people who had worked miracles to bring humanity to this moment. She thought about all the divisions that still existed, all the problems humanity had not solved, all the reasons they might not be ready for what came next. Then she thought about the pioneer, disappearing from Earth orbit and reappearing at the edge of the solar system. She thought about the data spreading across the planet, sparking collaboration between former enemies. She thought about what humans could accomplish when they stopped fighting each other and started reaching for the stars. She began typing her response, each word a bridge between worlds, between species, between everything humanity had been and everything it might become. We are interested. We are ready. We are coming.